on tap.
Welcome back to MTGYou, the Magic the Gathering podcast for you. I'm James.
Swinging from lampshade to lampshade. I'm Blades.
No, yeah, man, we're good. We're good. No, I just gotta go. Hey, I'm Damon. No, I really gotta go, man.
It was the monster match. I'm Peter.
Welcome back to MTGYou. This is, I lost my place. Welcome back to MTGYou, the Magic the Gathering podcast for you. They didn't put it in the show notes. I'm all out of sorts. It's Thursday, the 9th of October, 2014, and we're coming to you live from Studio U. Thanks for joining us. This is episode 54. I got it right.
Yes.
Upkeep.
We don't have Rich here to talk over my bumpers,
No,
unfortunately.
it feels a bit empty here.
Yeah. But we do have Peter. Say hi, Peter.
Hello, everybody. Good to be back.
We're glad to have Peter. And like I said, I didn't see in the doc where you had your words in there, and so that's usually where I key off of where I need to start reading from.
Oh, right.
And so then I was like, oh, what am I saying? Anyway, you hear the new music there at the opening. That's our new Season 2 music. If you don't like it, hang out for a season and it'll change.
Maybe.
You got to take a harder line. If they don't like it, find another podcast.
No. Listen, send us feedback. We'll read it. Play the music anyway. And anyway, so let's get into some news. Who's the one that talked about anthologies?
Yeah.
Or anthology. What about this?
Well, Monday premiered a kind of a nifty unboxing video online of the upcoming Dual Decks Anthology, which releases on December 5th. It's got 8 different decks in there, 4 of them, like 4 pairs that had already been released. Jace versus Chandra, Garruk versus Liliana, Elves versus Goblins, and Divine versus Demonic. And each of those decks has 35 tokens and its own deck box, and the thing itself also comes with 2 D20s. And it looks pretty sweet. The MSRP, I mean, for what you're getting, yeah, it's $100. I mean, for what you're getting, it's not that bad because those dual decks are about $20 a piece anyway.
Yeah.
And these are like older ones that I think come with some pretty good cards. As I recall, I think the Liliana deck, didn't that one come with a like a really souped up art demonic 2?
That was Divine
Looter?
versus Demonic.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Divine versus Demonic. But yeah, so I mean, there's some pretty sweet cards in there, so it should be pretty cool. I don't know if I'm necessarily going to put it on my Christmas list, but it's up there.
I like it. If I have the $100, I'll probably drop it because I do like the dual decks. I don't play them enough.
Absolutely. And from what I've heard, actually, the box that this comes in is like just 4 separate deck boxes that you can actually store sleeved cards in.
Oh, are they? They're big enough to put the sleeve cards in too. Though,
yes,
huh?
which is
that's
actually a
sweet.
pretty big thing with it's still cardboard, but I hear it's a
Yeah.
heavier cardboard.
That's nice. I do like it if you could put sleeves because a lot of all the dual decks come with
Just
the
their little
foils, right?
cheap
the little boxes that you
Yeah.
just can't. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's presented a little bit nicer. It either slides out or there's like a lid that lifts up, and it almost looks like those fancy people that have the briefcases, with
Does it
it's
come
sort of like
with
a
the
recessed
handcuffs?
space for each one of the boxes. I actually saw the unboxing too. It's pretty cool.
Does it
Okay.
come with the handcuffs with the suitcase, though?
No, unfortunately, handcuffs you must provide on your own.
I can get that. For my
Oh,
bed
he has
anyway.
those. Anyway, yeah, I think, and Rogue Deck Builder did a video on, he's just basically looking at the financial value of them a little bit. So if you go over to roguedeckbuilder.com's YouTube channel, he talked about what, he wasn't totally sold on the value of them, but I think
I don't think it's a product you pick up for the value.
Yeah.
You
I
pick
don't
it up
think so.
because you like playing random dual decks against each other, and like, man, I've always want to play Divine versus Goblins.
Especially since some of those are long out of print.
Right.
So
Yeah. And I think for me, I mean, because I have trouble getting anybody to play like the dual decks with me. For me, it would just be scavenging the cards, but I think it would be
Gotcha.
well worth it.
Mhm.
So, yeah.
What else in the news? Well, I guess there was a little fiasco with MTGO
Yeah, go figure. MTGO blowing up again.
back in the news.
So apparently there was a PTQ that happened, and as MTGO does it has bugs, but normally it doesn't happen in a top 8 of a PTQ. But I guess what happened was normally when you build your deck after a draft and then submit it, You just submit your 40 cards. What happened for up to 3 of the players, from what I've heard, they submitted their decks, and it actually submitted all their pools with excessive mana to help.
It automatically
for it.
it added enough mana.
Yeah, it was an auto add-on mana.
So they were what, 80 card decks or something
it
like
was
that.
roughly about 80 cards.
So an 80 card draft deck. Every card they drafted got auto included. And didn't you say one of the guys did pretty well?
I think actually one of the guys that this happened to that were playing an 80 card deck, I want to say that he won it all out.
That's interesting.
So, but that's a thing, and now the community is pretty up in arms about it. And because MTGO, when they're doing these big events that you're dedicating all this time to, they really need to have their
act together.
Yeah, it needs to be a trustworthy client. So what I guess they're going to have to do is they're going to have to replay the top 8, draft and all, and just pay out for another PTQ ticket to the next Pro Tour. I think this is for Washington.
Okay.
Washington, D.C.
That is
coming up.
interesting.
But, yeah, I guess that's a thing. And it's not looking too good for
hopefully
MTGO.
Hopefully they just, kind of can get their act together. You said that you saw a bunch of hiring going on.
Yeah, Wizards are actually going through a pretty big staffing thing. Like, they're hiring on a whole lot more positions. It's unknown whether, wild speculation here, whether people are getting canned or what.
Or if they're just saying,
which
hey,
I think
we're
is
going to
actually doubtful.
We're just throwing a lot of money at it.
Yeah, I think they're just expanding more or less, I would want to say.
Well, you said that they were looking for a programmer that was fluent in Japanese.
They are looking for a
I decided
programmer.
not to apply.
Even though you're fluent in Japanese.
I could have. I might be qualified. I don't know. But.
Yeah, it appears to be a lot of look more on the digital end of things.
So,
too.
Wizards, if you are interested in me, you can always contact me personally, and I might consider it if you contacted me. So
that actually wouldn't be a bad idea.
Yeah. Also in the news, any other Magic-specific related
So I guess just the only thing that's frustrating to me is that they took away PTQs online for a really long time. And for people who live out in rural areas, like out in your Wyomings and, your far depth snowy reaches of Canada and things like that, these guys played their online PTQs pretty heavily.
Right.
And there's some folks that were pretty successful that didn't have the chance
Right.
to drive to PTQ. And so, they took those away, and then they said, okay, guys, we're going to fix it, and then we'll give it back to you. And so the fact that this crashed in such a bad way is kind of disappointing. It's kind of a little bit of a again, we need a trustworthy client, and this was not something that was,
Absolutely,
you could
and
trust.
I would not mind getting into a MTGO as well, but this is absolutely it just is not going to happen.
Actually, Rich has been texting me all week about dude, I don't know, I'm kind of looking at Magic Online.
Well,
I don't know, man.
I definitely plan on doing it. And I plan on streaming them on Twitch too. I just haven't gotten around to it yet, but I really
Something needs to happen.
I'm going to. So, Peter, do you have any experience online?
I used to play MTGO about 2 years ago, and I dug it. The issue was I was doing it on an old, PC laptop that I had.
Oh.
And the laptop pretty much died. And for a while, it was taking 20 minutes to log on to it anyway. So I just, I quit. I couldn't do it anymore because my laptop died, and I got a Mac laptop. So, and the thing is, all these stories of the issues with the client, and the thing is, it was buggy when I played too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's never not been, right?
Yeah,
I don't.
And so
They've
it
never
doesn't really make me want to play it again. And this unfortunately is a pattern that Wizards has had. When they had 4th edition stuff for D&D, they had a character builder and an adventure builder, and those things were buggy as heck.
Yeah.
Even simple stuff you couldn't do right.
Well, part of the problem with them is just that they're a game company that has become a digital game company, and that just doesn't transition well. It's just too hard, I think. There's too much, because all of these cards are designed in a vacuum
Without digital necessarily in mind.
on paper.
Yeah.
To begin with, and that just changes the entire equation. People don't realize how critical or what a big part of that this is. So, So I have a tendency because of my programmer background to defend them a little bit, but I think that they could throw enough money at it and get it done. And if they had the right managers, I think they've just probably haven't figured out the right way to attack it.
Well, that's just it. Is from the outside looking in, we're going to complain a lot, and we don't know what the actual holdup is, whether it's financial or whether it's manpower-wise.
Or if it's just poor management, or if it's...
Right.
Or poor prioritizing of goals. Like, well, everybody definitely wants this thing fixed. It's like, no, that's like the 5th or 6th thing you want fixed.
Yeah.
So
anyway, we weren't going to dwell on that too much, and I think we already have
Pro Tour's coming
probably
up this
more.
weekend. Is that right? Am I remembering that correctly?
Actually, it starts tomorrow, and
if you're here with us in Twitch land, it's tomorrow. If you're here with us on
Hawaii
podcast
time,
land,
it's
then it
it's
could have
4
been
hours
any time.
right now
time.
it's happening.
Yeah.
No,
or any time.
I think they're behind us, aren't they?
Let's see. They're
Or are they
west
a
of us,
day
which means
ahead?
the sun
Where
comes
is
up
it?
afterwards. It's in
They
Hawaii.
are 4 hours
Oh, yeah.
behind us. I don't
Yeah.
know if that's if they start the day before
No,
us.
they
like
start
Japan
after.
does.
Yeah.
No, they're after.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, it'll be fun. If I can.
Gee, that's like a 7-hour or 7 hour split for Peter. People over towards
Mm-hmm.
they go farther east. That's
And any other news that you can think of?
well, we have some personal news about our show.
Yeah, next week we won't be having a show. I'm actually going on vacation for a little while. I'm taking 3 months off and going on a sabbat. No, just kidding. I'm just taking the weekend, guys. So we're not pod fading. We're just taking a week off. So I'm taking my family and going to a hot spring.
We'll all still gather in the room just talking to each other.
That's right. Everybody will just sit around and stare at each other. I'm the only one that ever talked around here. That was an old Steve Martin skit. The Death of Socrates. So funny. I wish I could find it on YouTube. Anyway, and also one other thing in news, I have an intern. My son has been looking for a job. He's 15. He's not quite old enough to get a real job. And so I'm putting him to work doing all the things that I don't want to do on the podcast and paying him really lousy wages. So so if you want life total pads,
We got a guy for that now.
send me an email. I will send you you'll probably within the week we'll be sending out a package. I now have someone I can farm all this stuff off to. Yeah, I'm gonna teach him how to edit video, so we'll start getting things up sooner. I'm gonna teach him how to post articles, so Pop Culture's Cube will be posted in a timely manner. So anyway, that's my news too. Anything else?
I don't think so.
All right, let's move on. Anything else, Peter?
Not that I can think of.
Okay. Blades, you good?
Go.
Draw step.
Isn't that so good? Do we have Rich in the chat room by chance?
I don't think he's there yet.
I don't think so.
Uh,
He must still be doing actual work at his job.
Yeah.
maybe he is.
Crazy rich.
Yeah.
He should be closing up soon, though.
Anyway, so on our ClickYou this week, we are spotlighting.
Yep. Peter, do you want to tell us about it?
You bet. I think we wanted to spotlight our good friend who shows up in the chat and also is a supporter of the show, Chris Renshaw, and his awesome podcast, Boards and Swords. Chris is a really cool guy, and you can find him on Twitter at Chris the Prof, and he is a real dyed-in-the-wool tabletop gamer, and just puts out a really great podcast in Boards and Swords that looks at Magic, looks at D&D, looks at all different kinds of board and card games he likes to play. I doff my cap to him. He recently won some of his first games of Netrunner and was very excited about that. So, but yeah, just check out his show. The podcast is a lot of fun. Comes out every couple of weeks, and it's Boards and Swords on iTunes, and really cool stuff.
Very cool.
Yes, yeah, he's a supporter of the cast. We chat with him on Twitter all the time, and we really appreciate him and want to give him a shout out. Check out his Boards and Swords podcast. He also had another podcast, didn't he? The OCD Cast.
Mm-hmm.
OCD Cast, and that's a lot of fun too.
Yeah. So, and how do we get to him? How do you find him?
You should just look up Boards and Swords. I think it's Boards, ampersand, the and sign Swords on iTunes, and also the OCD Cast. And then you can find him. I think he's Obsessive Comics Disorder is his handle on Facebook, and then also he's on Twitter at Chris the Prof,
right?
and Instagram at Chris the Professor.
Okay. And I'll put a link in the show notes for him. So first up on our draw step, Blades, you have, let's see if I can find the, is that it? Hammerhand.
Yep. So Hammerhand, 1 red for an enchantment aura, enchanted creature. When Hammerhand enters the battlefield, target creature can't block this turn. Enchanted creature gets +1/+1 and has haste. So I've been doing a lot of work within the past few weeks with a bit of a heroic enabler deck. I talked a week ago or something like that about a list I got from Saito, actually, that he is posting online that was just full of 1-drops. And this is probably one of the most powerful 1-drops in it, especially in this new format going forward, to where we're looking at a lot of green decks, and it's not uncommon at all for your opponent to have like a turn 2 Courser of Crewfix. This comes down and it just lets you get in that little nubs of damage that you really need to get in there, where the format is a little bit slower, to where turn 3 they're wanting to get a little bit of things, just like 1 blocker into play or something, outside of the turn 2 Courser. That is not too uncommon, but this really gets in there for damage. I've been dealing consistently 6 damage on turn 2, and then another 10+ damage on turn 3 with this and other heroic enablers, and this has just been a outstanding card in the list that I've been playing.
Can't wait to look at that list. That looks like a fun list.
It absolutely is, and the biggest part about it is haste is really big. +1/+1 is but the really can't block, that's really, really huge. It triggers prowess.
You did pretty good that time. Yeah,
Right,
it wasn't
there we
as
go.
smooth as before. I think you're a
No.
little camera shy, and
That
so
could be it.
But earlier, boy, you nailed it. So anyone that knows
But
his
yes,
prowess
it
disability
does
is
trigger,
clearing
it
up.
triggers that. It triggers heroic, and it just helps you get through with a lot of your heroic guys. And I really feel like this is more than likely going to be seen play, if not at the Pro Tour, in many of the aggressive decks moving forward.
Yeah, at least at your FNM near you, right?
Absolutely. It's the heroic decks out there are
And it actually also
extremely
adds to your
aggressive.
red devotion if you try to go like a Mogus route too, which is kind of neat.
I'm not sure if that's the way
I don't know if
to
it's
play
quite the
it, though.
yeah, it's not probably quite the build, but you know.
It could be there, but
It
I
doesn't
don't think
yeah,
so.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, and my card for the week is Hornet Queen. Someone's already done this before, but I chose this one because she's been seeing ticking up in price. I've been watching her going up in price, and Hornet Queen is 4 colorless and 3 green for a 2/2 rare creature insect, flying Death Touch. When Hornet Queen enters a battlefield, put 4/1/1 green insect creature tokens with flying and Death Touch onto the battlefield. So here's the reason I picked this one. First of all, I've been watching her tick up in price. Unfortunately, not in the place where I want to pick her up, because I don't know if she'll keep going like Goblin Rabble Rouser has. I mean, I remember when I saw Goblin at $4, and I'm like, oh wow, it's probably topping out. What's it at now? 20?
20.
My gosh. So I'm not saying that it's going to be that, but I just like this card. And next, just so you know, guys, I'm planning on starting beekeeping next spring. And
Really?
So, yeah, I've been studying beekeeping. I know, I do a lot of things, and so this card kind of reminded me of that. I thought, no, I'm not raising hornets, I'm raising honeybees.
So I guess the question is, to be or not to be.
Yeah, to hornet or not to hornet.
Yeah, this guy has been seeing a lot of play in the recent green list, and depending on where the metagame shifts, he can either continue to skyrocket up, or he can stay stagnant and maybe move back down to where he was before.
Regardless, if I can pick up, well, and if it moves down, I'm happy. I'll pick up a playset. If And
Just waving at chat. That's all.
okay, cool.
Don't mind me.
All right. If they move, if it moves up, I don't know what'll happen. But if it goes down, I'm definitely picking up a playset because I think long term this is a cool card.
Yeah, if you just want to keep your eye on the Pro Tour, and then if it looks like there's a lot of green decks being played, you absolutely probably should invest into this guy because I can fully see him jumping at least another $5 more.
Maybe
if
it's being played, that is.
Yeah, within the next month or so.
Yep.
Well, and two, even if standard's not your flavor, this guy is going to be cool in
all sorts of things. Yeah.
Any EDH deck that has green, if you can get them out and use some flicker effects, you've got the game pretty much won.
Man after my own heart. Flicker effects.
Yeah. Anyway, okay, next up we have Damon with Genesis Hydra.
So while I love the flickering, and that is still always going to be my very favorite thing, the other thing that I love is card advantage. We had such a clear-cut source of card advantage in previous standard through Sphinx's Revelation and Opportunity if you couldn't afford it. That, you just would trade your one card and draw a bunch more cards. And that we don't, outside of stuff like maybe Divination and things like that, we don't have very, very clear-cut, powerful card advantage. And you saw me a couple of weeks ago play the Green Devotion Villainous Wealth deck, and Genesis Hydra can certainly stand in for Villainous Wealth and also be a very, very powerful threat. What's cool is that it casts the card when you cast the Genesis Hydra, and so even if Genesis Hydra gets countered or something like that, like the card that you're picking up off of Genesis Hydra is going to hit the field. And so again, it's a source of card advantage that is also presenting a big body for a threat. And, we were kind of excited about this guy before, but he lived in a world alongside things like Sphinx's Revelation, and now that we've lost some of this clear-cut card advantage, I think that it's forcing us to have to be a lot more creative to look for that. And I think the Genesis Hydra is certainly one of those places. And also, along with like Corsair Crew Fix and things like that, like we're getting a lot of this virtual card advantage out of green, and it's a really interesting and cool design space that I've enjoyed anyways a lot. So the plan was probably the next deck that I play for Fight Club is going to be a Green Devotion deck using Genesis Hydra in it as well. And I'm excited to see how that goes off. So
right, and green really has excessive mana right now, since that is looking to be more of the Nykthos Devotion deck, and that just really fits really well into what this guy does.
Okay, anything else? Anybody want to comment on that, or are we moving on to
Peter?
Empty the pits.
All right, yeah, Empty the Pits. It is XX and 4 black for a mythic rare instant. It's got Delve, and you put X 2/2 black zombie creature tokens onto the battlefield tapped. This card, when I saw it was first coming out, I was really excited about it because it was sort of like the new Zombie Apocalypse, just sort of worse than Army of the Damned. The new Army of the Damned, but it's kind of worse than Army of the Damned. It's I think my favorite card in the new set, but it's also, I think it's like my most hated card at the same time because it could be so much better. It's really awesome, but it could be so much better at the same time just because I think it's ever so slightly overcosted, and I don't like the fact that the zombies come in tapped. However, it's going in my the Abzan EDH I'm working on right now. So it's just a fun card. Anytime you can bring out a lot of disco zombie funky guys and get them out, and it's cool. So
yeah.
Yeah, the big thing about that is that it's at instant speed, so you can play it at the end of your opponent's turn.
Right.
What looks like free shenanigans or something like that. And
it
gives the illusion that they might not actually be tapped, and have a little bit of a haste effect. So that's fairly relevant as well.
Yeah, that is true. Since it's an instant, it kind of like
I actually
you can
think
kind of cheat that in.
Yeah, I think this is better than Army of the Damned for sure, just because of the instant clause on it.
Right, and the only issue that I have with it is you're gonna have to have to really get your money's worth out of it. It's either gonna have to be something like very late game, or you're gonna have to have a lot of stuff in your graveyard to get it out.
That's very true.
For it to have the same effect as Army of the Damned, at least to get out 13 guys, you're gonna have to have the relevant mana plus 26 cards in your graveyard. So.
Yeah, which means that this either goes into a dedicated mill deck or a dredge deck, excuse me. Right. Or I actually seen this play a little bit in a mono black devotion list. It's just a an end game finisher.
Sure.
All right. So, anything else before we move along?
Before we move on, I'd also like to thank the chat. Genesis Hydra puts things into play, doesn't cast them.
Oh, yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's what makes it uncounterable. Anyways, just for the clarity, I always appreciate that.
Yeah.
We're all growing and getting
You
better
know,
together.
We love having a chat room that can help us
Sometimes
out.
speaking is hard.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Just like math. Like last week, I had on the title screen, I had episode 50.
And we're on 54 today.
And we're on 54.
It's cool, guys. We're time travelers. Anyways.
Anyway, okay, moving along. Do I hear Rich talking someplace in the universe?
Main phase.
Okay. So today, this is actually an episode that Blades suggested, and I am really stoked for because this is down my alley. I'm looking forward to hearing what these guys are going to talk about. Basically, compare and contrast aggro versus burn. These are not a lot of times we think aggro and burn are the same thing, or we talk about them in the same sentence. Let me just ask you this: is burn a form of aggro, or are they
Almost.
completely different?
They're
I mean, I wouldn't say completely
they're
different,
not completely different, but they're different enough to have an archetype.
but yeah.
Burn is a little bit more of a more aggressive strategy. I like to think of it as more of like a aggressive mid-range, to where it's absolutely not faster than most aggro strategies.
Mhm.
But the key factor in determining burn or deciphering a burn spell from a aggro deck is it's more spell oriented, where I feel like an aggro deck is a little bit more reliant on creatures.
But, those sort of definitions aside, the big thing is that both of these decks are trying to win in the early part of the game.
More early so, yes.
Which kind of allow them to be lumped together, even though there's definitely some subtle differences to the play style and the decision making that you have to have. So
Yeah, and I think that's why this episode is so cool. Is because if you Google this, you don't see this topic out there. People aren't talking about these two things, and yet these are often lumped together. So
Fairly much so, yeah. To go a little bit more in depth into it, to where a aggro deck, it just wants to lay everything out on the table as soon as possible and hopefully get a advantage through that and just try to outrace their opponent. Whereas the burn deck, it still wants a little bit of that ability, but it still wants a little bit more of a top deck later on, to where it still has that versatility of top decking a spell and making sure that it can still get through to the opponent at most cost.
in an aggro, if you haven't won early on, you lose a lot of hope. Is
Exactly.
what you're saying. Whereas burn, you still have some hidden information that might help you out in the long run.
Yeah, aggro almost exclusively wants to play for the early game. They want to win by turn 5 or 6 at the latest. Whereas burn, they can extend their race into turn 7 or 8 at times, just because they do have that versatility and the ability to get through with damage that can get around being blocked by creatures, for instance.
So here's the other thing: there's a misconception about burn aggro, is that just beginning players. It's just for beginners. Is that?
That is actually quite false. Even though it could be easier for a beginner to grab the deck and pick up and learn and play better than what a other deck would be, like for instance with a control deck, that can seem a little bit daunting to a newer player.
Right.
Whereas this one, it's a little bit more straightforward on what you want to do, but it actually gives you a bit more of a field to go through it. So for like control decks, in the past I have stated that a control decks gives you more options to outplay your opponent, and it also gives you more spells and interactions. Whereas with burn, it gives you less time or less interactions and less time to make said interactions, but the interactions that you do make are just extravagantly more complex.
Right. So go ahead.
Just, I mean, I've heard it sort of explained like, in your average control deck, you get, 15, 20 turns to try to close out the game, which means that each individual decision you make along the way, you could make like a decision that was like 90% right versus like 50% right. But in Burn, it seems like frequently you're either right or you're wrong. And each decision you make has a much greater impact on the outcome of the game, because you just you don't have any room to slip up, which is I think where you see like the novice Burn and Aggro players versus the really skilled ones.
Right.
I mean, like Diego Chan made that fantastic like Naya Blitz deck a while ago. Is it Tom Ross? He's been playing Red forever, and he's really quite a good Magic player as well.
Boss Slade list.
Yeah.
There's one other Red player that you're not mentioning.
We also got James.
I'm sorry. Yeah. The cheat. Anyway, do you play any Peter? Do you play any Aggro or Burn? Have you?
Aggro is pretty much my jam when I'm not playing EDH, or even if I am playing EDH. I've put together like Jund Aggro EDH that really close out the game really fast, and I started playing Aggro pretty much from my first time playing Magic, and that was a problem for me. Like when I started playing Limited, I was making like the decks that were really relying on like tiny creatures, and I was like, okay, this is gonna win, and then I get to turn 6, and I'm like, why am I not winning? And then I get crushed by some guy puts out a 6/6 creature, and I can't deal with it. But like I've been tweeting and texting with you guys a bunch about the Naya Modern I've been building, and that's pretty much a straight up aggro deck, and that's a lot of fun. I think that might be one of the probably the more famous like aggro builds that a lot of people use out there is the Naya Zoo.
Yes.
So a lot of times, Burn is a lot of times red. Red Burn. There's variations on that, but it probably almost every Burn at least includes red.
Yeah.
For the
and
most
probably
part.
and sometimes one more color, perhaps a white,
a black or so,
white,
because
yeah.
with Gray Merchant of Asphodel or Gary from last season, he can be construed a little bit as a burn card because he had that drain life effect,
right?
To where he could just end games out of nowhere. So
but
we definitely saw it last season. Anyways, a lot more like the white with Boros Charm, and now we have the Deflecting Palm, which that card just really shows some huge blowout potential.
It is
In fact,
actually the nuts.
When I thought of Deflecting Palm, like for whatever reason, my brain just put an X in front of the white red, and I'm like, oh, you deflect X, or you prevent X damage and deal X damage, because I've seen those spells happen in Magic's past. And the fact that it just says like to one source, no damage, all damage, like that is actually pretty uniquely positioned right now. The card just seems super, super powerful. So
and a lot of times when you think aggro, you also think red, but that's not nearly as. You can have a lot of different builds.
It definitely has
aggro.
the stereotype of having the most everything on board and just all at your face.
So one of the big things that I was actually talking about earlier was card advantage. That we have new sources of card advantage in green, that we had card advantage in with Sphinx's Revelation. And one of the really unfortunate things with Burn, like Peter was saying before, is that like you expend your hand, and if you haven't won the game, now you're just sort of like drawing off the top and waiting to die. And that red, I've heard red's card advantage be explained pretty differently, right, Blades?
It is actually extravagantly more differently. Back into the different kinds of card advantage, where blue just wants any cards off the top of the deck. Green, with the Genesis Hydra, as we're talking about earlier, just gets a free guy out whenever. Black, it does a bit at the cost of life. It also has graveyard card advantage, to where you can just reoccur different things from the graveyard. Reds is it really just wants to get the game over as quickly as possible, as quickly as humanly possible. You wouldn't think that gives you a card advantage because you're just laying it all out on the battlefield. But really, the kind of card advantage that you really need to look at this like is that your opponent, by the time that you are able to cast all of your spells, your opponent is still stuck with a bunch of spells in his hand that he is still unable to cast. So you are effectively just getting a lot of the cheaper spells. And
the card advantage is I get to cast mine before you.
Yeah, so this one is a little bit. It can be.
Well, and if they die with cards in hand, then you actually ahead that many cards, right?
Right.
That it gives the illusion of that, like that feels accurate, but like it really the best way to think of it as is like you just made your opponent discard X amount of cards because you just simply outraced it. You have access to these 7 cards, whereas your opponents can only play these maybe 3 cheaper cards that are in his hand. So it definitely gives you a little bit more extension that way.
You know, another interesting source of card advantage, of course, just being able to play multiple spells a turn, and that helps you end the game very quickly. Is if we look at modern, you have cards like Aether Vial, that's played in the Fish or Merfolk list,
Yes.
or like the Hate Bears list, and that allows you to tap your Aether Vial to put guys into play, and then also have cards in your hand that you can continue to cast as well, like your Path to Exiles and things like that. And so that's another super efficient way to be able to play multiple spells a turn and just try to end the game more quickly and more efficiently than your opponent can. So, anyways, that's another source of sort of this. It's not card advantage at all in the traditional sense, and so definitely don't misquote us there. But that if your opponent is dead and they have lots of cards in their hand, they never cast them, so you're ahead that many cards.
So it absolutely
It's like
is.
it's
a
card
form.
advantage in the rearview
In
mirror.
post, yeah.
It's like you're looking in your rearview mirror. Yep, I had card advantage.
But at the same time, if you just don't kill your opponent by that time, then you actually
you're-
don't get any advantage.
Then you're actually
whatsoever.
down several cards. Because,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Huh.
So that's kind of fascinating. So again, we kind of talked about this before, that aggro is based on small dudes and that burn is based on, obviously just shooting fire at somebody's face.
To sum it up simply, yes.
So aggro really asks you to commit lots of guys to the board, which can be kind of scary. But burn play is a little bit different, that you can choose to play burn at a little bit of a slower pace, right, Blades?
You can go for more of a higher ends burn rate, as you did with Boros Charm or with in the last season, War Leader's Helix, or right now, Stoke the Flames is a really big one. That's probably the best burn spell in current standard. But it definitely does give you that extension to where you can just knock them down with some sort of repetitive form of damage in a creature form. Like last season, we had Chandra's Phoenix as probably the poster child for that. Right now, I don't know what we're moving to. Oh, Goblin Rabble Master is probably one of the big ones, or Mantis Rider.
The Mantis Rider, yeah.
Those are pretty big staples that lead way into that. But funny thing is that when you play less creatures and your opponents have removal spells, you have a tendency to have a board full of no creatures. So you really need that extension to get in there, and that's what the burn does really well, is that especially at the end of the turn, it sneaks through massive amounts of damage under counter magic, or really just under whatever other shenanigans your opponents can have, to where your opponents can be at 8 or 12 life and just simply lose the game fairly quickly.
Yeah, one of the cards that I'm kind of fascinated right now with both standard and modern burn is Eidolon of the Great Revel. He's a super difficult card to actually play with, because you try to cast him as early as possible, so hopefully turn 2 he comes down. And for you guys who maybe don't remember, Eidolon of the Great Revel, he deals damage whenever people cast cards that only cost 1, 2, or 3. Is
Hang
that right?
on a second, Peter. You're coming back.
Peter, we lost him.
I've been exiled.
He's here. I
there we
just
are.
covered him up. I'm trying to pull up cards if I can.
Right. Anyways, so the cool thing about that is that you can continue to draw cards off the top of your deck each turn and just sort of build this stockpile of burn. And your opponent eventually is going to have to answer this Eidolon, right? So the moment they remove it from the battlefield, or it gets late enough into the game that they're casting cards that don't trigger him, then you just have this handful of burn that you can shoot at the person's face. And of course, you may be getting damage dealt to you from the Eidolon, but
which happens all the time, because most of the spells that you're wanting to play in this burn or aggressive build is going to be converted mana cost 3 or less.
Right, but it's cool because I take 2, you take 3. I take 2, you take 4.
And that's always the idea with burn or aggressive decks in general, is that it's okay to take damage as long as you're taking a little bit less than.
It's a little bit of the suicide strategy, to
Right.
where you don't care if you die at 1 life, so long as your opponents are still 1 damage ahead of you.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, again, he's a card that can be, and actually it's one of the cards that really punish you if you don't know exactly what your opponent's playing. I see frequently Eidolon of the Great Revel either is in sideboards or it's main deck, and you have to choose whether or not to take it out of your deck for game 2 or 3. And if you maybe got a bad read on your opponent or they side out of part of their strategy, like suddenly you're the only person who's getting really heavily triggered by Eidolon, and yeah, it's one of those really, really tricky cards. But it's kind of fascinating and definitely is a different place to play around right now in the current state of
it
where Burn
absolutely
stuff
is,
at.
and really, he's really matchup defining on whether or not you want him, or whether or not you're on the beatdown plan or not. I find that if I'm on the draw, a lot of times I will automatically side him out rather than keep him in, and I on the opposite as well, whether or not I'm on the play, because if you are on the play, then you can turn 2 your opponent's turn 1, slime him onto the board, let your opponent untap, and then they have to either answer him or they just start taking damage off of him. Whereas when you're on the draw, your opponent just gets in that extra spell to hope to maybe get in that extra little bit of damage and sneak through two potential damage that could have hit him in the end.
Yeah, so another... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I'm good.
Okay, so another really interesting element about both aggro and burn together is that, at the 2-drop slot right now in Standard, we have cards like... it was Lightning Strike, and it's something different now. Or is it Lightning Strike?
No, it's Lightning Strike now.
Okay,
You're
cool.
thinking Searing Spear.
Yeah, Searing Spear. So we have like Lightning Strike. That's like 3 damage. That's pretty sweet. It's flexible. Or we have stuff like Nyx Fleece Ram. We have Eidolon of the Great Revel, or we have Sylvan Caryatid. Like, at the 2-drop slot, these cards all appear to do quite a bit. Friggin' like Sylvan Caryatid is honestly kind of just a do-nothing card. He doesn't have legs to get up and attack. He sits there and maybe blocks some guys.
He's a mana wall.
So at the 2-drop slot, like, we are playing much more powerful things. But you look at the 4-drop slot in some of these decks, and you have like a Pelukrinos. And then you look at Red's 4-drops, and they don't exist. And so you're really trading power early at the expense of power later in the game. And I think one of the most important things for every burn deck, whether you're playing in like a constructed format or you're playing in like a draft format, it's actually almost more important there that you have a deck that's either aggressive or burn that has reach, right? You have a way that, maybe you're really good at dealing the first 15 points of damage, and you need to figure out a way to do the last 5 points of damage.
Get there.
You gotta have a Lava Axe or something.
Yeah, you definitely want a mixture of the two, of the burn spells and the aggressive spells. Just one definitely wants to lean more in one pile than the other.
Yeah, I think right now, currently, one of the interesting things about some of the burn decks we've seen in the past, especially the devotion-based red deck, was Fnatic Amogus. He was like a fantastic point of just reach. That, like, again, you just have all these cheap early red guys that do your initial points of damage, and then especially if you can land like Mogus and then Mogus again the next turn. Like, it just should probably be game over at that point.
Yeah, in the past format, I found him doing a bare minimum of around 7 damage whenever he hit the battlefield.
Which is crazy.
Which is crazy
so
when you're
damage.
hitting them in the face for the past few turns with like a 2-1 Satyr and such.
Yeah, I really I like that. But that's actually something that's really difficult in drafts for me anyways, is to look for those cards. Like, I get sort of caught up. Like Peter, had kind of, we were talking before the show, talking about that, like, getting caught up in like sort of the small, like, white weenies or whatever, this trap of picking all the small cheap guys and then forgetting to grab something that'll actually help you end the game. And a lot of times when I'm drafting, I'm like, that card costs 5 mana, like, I'll never be there.
Mm-hmm.
And like, again, in draft and sealed, like, even your aggressive decks, you probably need 1 or 2 cards like that could just go over the top at the end, right, Peter?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. I still haven't learned that lesson.
So Blades, tell us a little bit about what you're thinking about usually when you're playing these, like maybe game 1.
So game 1, when I'm moving into game 1, and you draw your opening 7, when you're looking into this, before you mulligan or anything, like, your typical newer player coming into it, they look for like land, make sure that they got land, and maybe like a creature or something, and that they're thinking, okay, yes, I can keep this hand. This is fine. I got land to play my spells, but what am I actually gonna do with this? So in your typical burn or aggro deck, what I typically like to do is I like to before I take it to any big event is I like to do some drive runs with it. Just grab some opening 7 card hands and look into it and see how much damage is the average going into it for turn 1, going into turn 2, and then turn 3 up to turn 4. To know what you can expect and know what is reasonable to keep going into these matches. So if you open up your opening 7 and you know that your deck is reasonable enough to deal 5 damage on turn 2 or turn 3, and you're only looking into it and you're only seeing upwards of 2 or 3 damage that you're able to do, typically one would probably keep that hand. But then you actually know, okay, I know that I can actually get a better hand if I just mulligan this away. One of the other things that you're wanting to look for is, once again, your mana. And what you're going to do with it. Because in your aggro decks, you don't want to keep high mana hands. I found that in a lot of control decks, like keeping a 5 mana hand is fully reasonable. Because you're still going to be drawing into live spells and to help save you throughout the rest of the game.
Right, it guarantees you can, if you survive to the long game, you can now cast all your long game spells.
Right. That's also assuming that your 2 other spells are reasonable and they're not just do-nothings in hand.
Right.
In your mid-range, you could probably keep like a 4 mana hand, and that's probably optimal because you're still doing something with those 3 other cards. So for every excessive land that you draw in your aggressive deck, that's sort of like a dead card. So really what I've found is like 3 mana in many cases is probably the most amount of mana that you want to see.
It's like the sweet spot?
That's actually
or is that
not
the
sweet
top
spot. That's like the top that you want to keep.
Oh, okay.
I think
in
2
your
a lot of
aggressive.
times is way better.
Really?
2 is really
interesting. Okay.
Yeah. 2 is your sweet spot. 1 is
It depends on what
you
kind of
feel
a
good
one-lander
about
it
it.
is.
Like it depends on what kind of one-lander it is, like, and what you're looking into. I know that the deck that I'm playing right now in standard.
You only play 1-drops in
aggressive
your
deck,
current deck.
Yeah, it's only 1-drops, and there's a bunch of 1-drops that actually cantrip into more cards.
If they're all 1-drops, then I'm just saying.
Yeah.
One land is the sweet spot.
That also gives you if you're on the draw, that also gives you a more incentive to do so, since it's a difference of like 12% being able to draw into that second land by your turn 2 of when you're actually going to be able to utilize it.
You know, it's interesting you talk about the dead, that lands are dead draws, you know, in aggro decks. You know, it's kind of fascinating. We live this new world in standard where we get to play with fetch lands. And I know a very common thing in the old, you know, modern burn lists is that they would play 8 fetch lands just so that they could crack their fetch land, go find a land, and pull lands out of their deck so that there was less likelihood of drawing lands as the game progressed.
Yeah, they would call this a mana thinning.
Right.
So
kind of allows you to almost play with 52 cards in your deck instead of
this
60.
is a real thing, but it's also something to be wary of because scry is actually still a really big force in this current format. And a lot of times when you're scrying in these aggro decks, you're actually pushing a lot of lands toward the bottom of your deck. So when you're actually running through with these sack lands, sure, you're thinning your deck out of less land, but as you're doing this, you're actually grabbing all these scry lands that you shift to the bottom, and then you're shuffling them back into your deck. So if you have scryed 2 lands to the bottom of your deck, you're actually degrading the draw effectiveness of your deck.
So do you pick one or the other? Do you say, okay, well, do you want to either go the scry route or the fetch route, or what do you do?
I would say so. I'd say that going into it, you definitely don't want to just toss them in there thinking that they're just the way to go. Just because.
Which do you think is more effective, scrying or
personally,
fetching?
I want my lands on time if I'm playing an aggro deck, and so
fetching
I'm thinking fetching
get you
gets
there.
the answer. Yeah.
Plus, scrying they come in tapped and
right,
and so there's that downside.
And if you really want to scry in a red deck, like just play 2 mana, deal 2 damage, scry 2.
which is actually a huge one that really gets you there. That's probably the one spell
What is it?
in a Magma Jet.
Thanks, Magma
That's going to
Jet.
get you to where you need to be,
Magma.
and you're more than likely going to be sending those 2 mana from the top onto the bottom there more times than not.
Magma.
Also, with these fetch lands, they also deal you damage, so you really don't want them as much in the aggressive mirror. They don't hurt you too awful bad, but it's still 1 point of damage is something to be thoughtful of.
Oh, that's I pulled up Magma Spray. I meant to boot Magma Jet.
Magma Jet, yes.
Yes.
Oh, I didn't notice that, though. Magma Spray deals 2 damage, and I guess Magma just deals 2 damage.
Huh. That's good to know. Next time you're in Hawaii, guys, have you ever seen some magma?
Volcanic Fallout.
If you happen to be somebody like me and you're maybe like a 1/3,
You're okay.
you're going to be fine.
You can't take it on, but you're going to survive.
Right, you'll make it. You'll make it. And lose some weight in the process.
Some cool battle
Reminds me of
scars.
an old line from, I forget what it was, but the old line was, if you ever drop your keys in a volcano, don't go after them because, man, they're gone.
You think? That's funny.
Some sage advice.
It is, yeah.
So I think, again, like we were saying before, that the ability to make either just the right decision or just the wrong decision, you feel like you're kind of balancing on the edge of a knife, with aggro decks.
Oh, absolutely.
That it really asks you, I think, at least as much as every other kind of deck that exists in the format, that you're thinking about your turns ahead and that you're playing turns ahead in the game to figure out how you're going to close out the game, right? That like you're considering constantly, what sorts of cards could I draw? How many more of these Stoke the Flames that deal 4 damage have I drawn through 2 of them? Okay, I'm probably not going to draw another 4 damage spell now. Or do I still have all 4 of them hiding? Like, is there a chance that I could maneuver myself to not block
it's
so that I
more-
can convoke it out?
Maybe more math-based than even other strategies, perhaps?
Absolutely. This is
Yeah.
actually the most mathematically inclined of all of the archetypes, to where
If you can do that math quickly, you're going to be better off to be able to think through, okay, I have X amount in my hand for the next 3 turns. I need to draw into this much in order to finish it off, etc.
That, and also when planning out your turns ahead of time, it lets you know, hopefully you should know the format and what your opponent's deck is capable of, such as turn 1 Elvish Mystic, turn 2 Courser of Crucifix into multiple things. This helps you plan out and know that you can then play around this. This actually works really huge with Hammer Hand right now, to where you don't just want to cast this out into nothing. You probably want to utilize all of its abilities as many times as possible, and where Hammer Hand lets a creature not block, it's really important to try and utilize that whenever possible.
Like, wait for them to try to stabilize with the Pelucranos after they've tapped their Sylvan Caryatid or something like that.
Exactly,
Right.
so that you don't have to attack all your creatures into a death
Kind of
race.
goes back to the card advantage. Timing is everything then, because I mean,
Right.
this card has all these utilities, and you could just waste it early on and not get all of the utility out of it, or you could wait for the opportune time, and that making that decision of when that time is crucial.
Absolutely. So you can more than likely push through more damage now if you do it like this, but if you do it from this other point of view and hold Hammer Hand in your hand for 1 more turn, wait for them to actually play something that could possibly block what you're going to be swinging with the next turn, you could push through even more damage going into the next turn.
Right.
So that effectively nets you extra damage going into it. So just because you can do something doesn't necessarily mean that you should do something. And it also, a lot of your plays are going to be slightly telegraphed coming into it. Especially, I'm just going to use this standard heroic build going into it for reference that we have right now, because that's really visual right now. To where you can use something like Titan Strength and push through damage right now, and you can do that at sorcery speed. You don't have to do it at instant speed if you know that your opponent doesn't have any blockers available to them.
Did you say Titan Strength?
Yes.
Let me pull
It's
it
red
up.
giant growth.
Yep.
Oh, right.
This could help get you value. It could also help get you information, especially with the Scry 1 ability. With this one,
yeah.
I actually find myself using this on my upkeep in a lot of scenarios. Just to help.
Whoa, yeah, I guess you can do that.
Yeah, just to help make sure that you can push through that extra damage and top deck into something that is more relevant right now, so that you don't have to wait that extra turn to hopefully see what you get. If you need a land, you can dig yourself into a land. If you need just one more, like, hammer hand or whatever, it helps you dig to that as well.
Seeing a novice player wouldn't think of all these little, the beginning player might have this deck, but they wouldn't think of all these little idiosyncrasies that they could eke out of this.
Yeah, I mean, if your guy does get +3/+3 all the way to the end of the turn, I guess nothing is stopping you from going untap, Titan Strength my guy, look for my second land, hammer hand my guy, shoot you for lots of damage.
Especially
like,
in
that's
the
pretty cool.
in the earlier turns, and we have a lot of tapped lands coming into this new format. This just leaves it a whole lot open to where you're more than likely going to have a lot of free time just to play this at your leisure time. Just because it says instant does not mean that it has to always be played at instant.
One of the things that's really interesting as far as just running the math for both burn and aggro when it's red based, white adds a really interesting change in math that can really screw up your opponents, in that you could play an anthem type effect. And what we mean by anthems is like something that gives all your guys +1/+1.
It affects
like,
all of them.
like Spear of Heliod
Right.
currently, right? That your opponent could think like, okay, I see, that these guys can pump out like, say, 5 damage a turn, but if you turn that number into like 9 damage a turn, suddenly that changes their math and just shortens the clock a ton, and also does allow you to have some reach in another color. Red provides reach by just putting burn directly at the face, and I feel like these kind of effects allow your little guys that you're playing to continue to stay relevant as the game goes later, because a 1/1 is just sort of laughable, but like a 2/2 or like a couple 2/2s, like they can start to take down some pretty big guys.
2/2 is exactly twice as big.
Exactly, it's twice the clock.
and this is how good at math I am. That 2/2 is twice as big as a 1/1. Whereas that's actually a big deal. I mean, you think 1/1s are almost, they don't impact the board enough.
Right.
But a 2/2 is suddenly shaves everything, cuts everything exactly in half. So
well, and I actually think that there's a chance. I've seen some people running around with some triplicate spirits based decks, that run these guys, and like again, the little 1/1 flyer is not too scary. You think like, oh, maybe these guys can jump block or something. But if you're suddenly putting each one of these triplicate spirits as a 2-power guy in the air, like that actually can close out the game really, really fast.
It absolutely can. It's the whole thought of going wider instead of going taller. With just all of your stuff on one big guy, you're just putting so many small guys into it. This gives you the versatility of just making them a little bit taller while still going wider as well. So that helps on that aspect as well. But back to the mathematically inclined part of it a little bit.
I want to bring Peter in here. Peter,
Yeah.
Are you mathematically inclined?
I am not at all mathematically inclined.
Okay, I want to work you into the conversation a little bit here. I feel like you're not in this enough. So if there's anything you want to interrupt us with, any questions or insights, just feel free to stomp on us.
Well,
here.
I actually feel like Peter, you have had a lot of chance to play with Zoo. And so I guess just did you want to kind of let us know, because like I am not as familiar with playing with or against that deck.
Sure.
What kind of reach does that sort of a deck provide you with?
See, Zoo is good because if you can, and I've only just started, I've finally gotten my fetches, so I can finally get my lands out a lot faster. The issue with Zoo is, I mean, the deck is basically based on Wild Nicodles and Curd Apes, and you need to have, you need forests, plains, and mountains out to buff those guys, because the basic idea of Naya Zoo is you have tiny guys that self-buff, basically.
Right.
So you've got
One mana 3/3s are a pretty big deal.
Exactly. So you have Nicodle that starts out as a 1/1, but if you have a plains and a mountain in play, it becomes a 3/3, and that works out great, except for oddly enough, the guy that I tend to play against Magic most of the time, he plays Modern Burn, and my Naya Zoo falls to his modern burn almost all the time. Why? Because
Lightning bolt's a thing.
exactly, pretty much every frickin' creature in Naya Zoo is within bolt range.
3 toughness.
Nikotl becomes 3/3. Kurt becomes 2/3, which is why I have modified my deck some. I'm using the Kavu Predator, Grove of Burn Willows, Fiery Justice strategy. So you've got with Kavu Predator, it starts out, it's a bear, it's a 2/2 for 2, but every time your opponent gains life, it gets a +1/+1 counter, or it gets that many +1/+1 counters. So if you're using Grove of Burn Willows and you've got a bunch of Kavu Predators on the board, you can just tap that for mana, and it's free counters. Your opponent's gonna, in the short term, gonna get a couple life, but you're gonna be getting these giant creatures pretty quickly. So that's, I finally got my 4th Grove of Burn Willows to put in that deck. I've got all the Kavu Predators. I've got all my fetches. So right now, I think that deck is pretty well primed to at least move a little bit faster against Burn. The problem with Burn, what really scares me whenever I play against Burn, is if there's any mana open on the other side of the table, it's terrifying because you don't know what they've got. If they've got one red open, that can be the ball game if you don't have many guys out. So I can honestly say I hate Burn. I really do, because I play aggro and I love aggro. It's all you red mages out there, and but yeah. But no, I'm looking forward to finally giving this my Zoo a fair shake against this Burn deck. Now that, because he was playing with fetches and everything else, and now that I've got all my ducks in a row, I really want to give this a shot. But that's the main thing with Zoo, is trying to get your guys going as fast as you possibly can to avoid them having that card advantage against you and that land advantage. Otherwise, it's your Nikotls are going to be singed cats. So
yeah,
I think it's. I'm actually really glad you brought up the whole Grove of the Burn Willows and Kavu Predator. One of the very first kind of cool times that we had to hang out with Peter over Twitter was, he was like, "Hey, how do I build Zoo? Because I like the idea of Zoo, but how do I build it for cheaper?" I'm like, I don't know if you can build Zoo without Tarmogoyf. Like, I don't know if there is a cheap way to play that. And so we were kind of chatting back and forth, and I'm like, "Oh, hey, I found a Zoo list that at Brian Kibler played to some pretty good success recently, but I have no idea how to make it, without Tarmogoyfs." And not 5 minutes later, Brian Kilber's like, "Oh, hey man, give Kavu Predator and Grove of the Burn Willows a try." And we're like, "Oh,
yeah,
huh. Well, hey, Pro Tour Hall of Famer Brian Kilber, thanks for the advice.
Yeah,
running some sweet decks." And anyways, just like one of those cool moments where, I'm used to watching these guys play on Twitch and stuff like that, and at the Pro Tour and things, and to just have somebody who's got a name for themselves in the community to just take a second and be like, "Oh yeah, just try this thing," and have it be successful. And Peter kind of has just sort of slowly been buying one Grove of the Burn Wolves at a time and heading over into this. So
$50 a piece.
Each one is how much right now?
If you get the ones from what is it?
The
foily
ones
from the vaults ones.
Yeah,
they're like $33 a piece.
Gotcha.
So very slowly, and then fetches on top of that. So it's been interesting. But
okay, well, I sort of interrupted. You were talking about math.
Yeah, I just want to do.
But hang on. So jump in whenever you want, Peter. That's the thing. I feel like I think you're being a little too polite. Go ahead, Blades.
But just the one thing that I wanted to harp on with Burn is that it's just easy just to look and do the math once and think to yourself, okay, this is the number. What can I do with this number? It's so much more easier if you do the math multiple ways to figure out maybe if you could come up with a different kind of number. And just keep doing that. So your first few turns are going to take a little bit longer, but that's fine because your opponent's going to be dead in the long term anyway. So just keep in mind that do the math, look for all other sorts of scenarios. Don't just focus on one. And just keep putting that through.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think that one of those really good examples is the idea of like, Titan strength on your upkeep. As again, not something that seems obvious, but definitely is a direction you can go. Now, I think one of the really interesting and kind of difficult things to playing aggro is you're so used to against mid-range decks, against especially control decks. You want to really just flood the board or flood their face with as much burn as possible. But you get in some really interesting decision-making when you are going aggro versus aggro, right? That it's really easy to get caught in the trap of like, well, I just send my guys in and I never block. That's what I do as an aggro player. And sometimes you're not the person who's winning that race, and it's really important to keep track of who's ahead and who's behind it, that maybe one day you might have to gasp a block. So, I don't know. Do you guys have anything to say about the aggro versus aggro mirror?
Yeah, that's typically referred to as who's the beatdown, who is actually the aggressive deck. And even though you are typically used to being the aggressive deck and constantly like putting your guys on the field and just turning them sideways all the time, sometimes you need to take a step back and be the defensive player for a change.
Wasn't that was that Flores that wrote the "Who's the Beatdown"?
Originally, yes.
Famous article by
Mike Flores.
Mike Flores that spearheaded this idea that has now taken on a life, and it's now in well entrenched in the
language of Magic, right?
Who's the beatdown now means something that's, I don't know, I think it's
years ago.
Yeah. Anyway.
But yes, this is his typical idea, and it's pretty much just shifting the metagame and learning when to attack and when not to attack. When you need to hold your forces back and pretty much hope to stabilize your own board, and then as soon as that's done, then you can hopefully you can have a better presence either in hand or on the battlefield. Because just because it doesn't look like you have enough things on the battlefield, you might still have a few relevant things in hand to help shift the game. A lot of these times, your opponent will just run their hand dry down to like 2 or 1 cards. Whether or not you can assume or not what they have in hand, this will help tell you whether or not you have time to actually shift positions, shift of roles, and start coming at them from the aggressive end. So who's the beatdown doesn't mean for the whole game.
It can shift roles several times.
It's at a given moment.
Exactly. You can even use it to maybe nub them in for like a point of damage here, and then maybe next turn you can get them in for a point of damage here, and slowly and steadily just get them throughout the thing while still holding your shields up. That is still also a option in a burn deck mirror.
Well, I think something else to consider is if you're in an aggro versus aggro matchup, try to aggro them differently. Because I tend to find in a lot of aggro versus aggro matchups, because like when I've been playing at in game days, I tend to have like this sort of same reiteration of a like red-white Boros deck, and I keep changing it with each each set that comes in. And the pattern that I keep seeing is because every time I play it, I tend to run into at least one aggro versus aggro matchup, and so much of the time everybody's running stuff on the ground. Nobody puts anything in the air. There's no flyers at all. Mm-hmm. And the thing is, if that's happening, exploit that. Board in some even just some 1/1 flyers. Anything that you can do that would out aggro them. I found that to be really helpful. There's one time I just built for casual. I just built this janky Kamigawa black-white aggro deck. Just because I thought it'd be a lot of fun. I put because the Kamigawa set I just bought the play set of all the commons, and they had a bunch of like fun 1/1 flyers. I'm like, okay, I put that together with some Lingering Souls, and I couldn't believe it. Like I was beating heads in this just with this casual deck that was just a lot of fun, but it had flyers that nobody expected. And I think that's just something that to consider is if you're seeing a lot of aggro that seems to be looking the same, figure out why it looks the same, and then try to exploit that weakness.
Figure out, what its weakness is. Yeah.
Right. Go for the evasion, and a lot of that is metagame dependent, because not all aggro decks are created equally, unfortunately. But yeah, a lot of who's the beatdown is determined by who is on the play and who is on the draw. So that's if you're in that mirror match and you're unsure of which role you're taking, at least within the first few turns, I feel like it's best to defer to that situation at hand.
Okay.
Yeah, one of the kind of cool things is recently, there's also been this mono black aggro deck that's existed in Standard, with Bloodsoaked Champion kind of being like the highlight card. And I played some mono black aggro last season, and it was a very, very fun deck. I really like the opportunity to play Thoughtseize with aggro decks, because you can just look for the nastiest thing that's in their hand, the thing that's going to stop you from winning the game the most, and just get rid of it. That paying 1 mana to deal with a Pelucranos, or paying 1 mana to deal with Nyx Fleece Ram, or whatever, is like a really big deal. But then I've also seen in the sideboard of one of these decks that recently did very well, they put a Herald of Torment ×3 in the sideboard. So when their opponent clogs up the ground with a bunch of small creatures like Nyx Fleece Ram or whatever for these control decks, then they just have their 2-power guys, and then they bestow the heralds onto these guys and pop them up over the top of whatever's going on, like Peter was saying, and flying their guys in and getting their last points of damage and using that as their source of reach, the Herald of Torment. And that was, again, one of like the main sort of combos that I was playing last Standard in black-white mid-range with, there was this random 6/6 for 4 mana, and like I would land him and people were like, oh, that's kind of funny, and then I would hook him up with a Herald of Torment and 9 them in the face. I'm like,
yeah,
this is some reach.
No longer.
Yes,
no longer funny.
surprise evasion can go a long way.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, it was. So, anyways, that's certainly, again, I like, we kind of keep rehashing a lot of these topics, but solving the problem of playing cards that are not impressive as you move into the late game, and having those answers to be able to provide those final points of reach is a really big deal. So, anyways, just when you were talking about aggroing in a different way, Peter, that like immediately came to mind. So
cool. Yeah.
So, anyways, is there? I mean, I just barely talked about that. I enjoy playing, the mono black aggro. That actually the very first competitive Magic deck I ever played was Zombies from a long time ago.
Yes.
I don't know. And then James, you've always said that you love just straight burn right at the face.
Straight burn. Yep. I think, and I need to rebuild my deck. I haven't built it yet this season, and I need to go through. I was just disassembling it, taking out all of the Ravnica stuff, and I haven't gotten around to
Poor Boros Charm. That was a good one.
I know it, but
I love Boros Charm.
Yeah.
Man. Oh.
It is greatly missed.
Yeah, I'll probably do something with. I'll probably try to do something with Boros Charm and some of those other things with modern.
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah, modern burn seems actually like kind of fun because you could play stuff like Dark Confidant, to like make sure you don't run out of gas. There's some nifty things out there for sure.
And deflecting palm now.
Yeah, that's a thing. Geist Aintraft? Sure. Hit you with a 4/4 Angel in the air?
What I think is funny is that
not today.
Right from the beginning, we've all we kind of pegged Blades as the blue mage. But really,
we're finding out
he has a lot of diversity. First of all, he likes elves, so he has that green aspect, and he likes the burn and the.
I do have a lot of diversity. Actually, I am 136th African American. Go figure.
And I'm 1/16th Wolverine. Hamster joke. So.
You were 136th Wolverine.
So, Blades, you like to play mono 1-drops. No, is there a kind of aggro that you enjoy playing more than another?
Typically not. Like I'm more on aggro than burn, but it's like it's whatever I have that current week. Right now, currently though, it's definitely a heroic strategy, just because I feel like it's very explosive in the early games, and I feel like a lot of the removal right now is very mana intensive, or it's fairly late game. So I feel like I can exploit my opponents through the early turns.
Yeah, how about you, Peter? I mean, I know you talked about like Zoo. Is that kind of your jam for sure as far as aggro and burn decks go?
For modern, definitely. But I mean, my love overall in Magic is tokens. If I can build a good token, and that's sort of like been my white whale, is to build a good, fast token aggro deck, and it existed somewhat when Innistrad was still in standard, but
sure.
it seems like it's difficult to balance. Have a good token aggro deck that puts out a lot of guys, but also buffs them up enough that they're not just gonna be cannon fodder. So that's sort of been like the thing I've been searching for a while.
Yeah, those decks always sort of ran the risk of drawing the wrong half of your deck, right? Where you
Right.
could draw all your token makers and then they're all just 1/1s, or you draw all your things that buff your tokens, and you've
Yeah.
only ever found like your, lingering souls or something only once. So
Like it's like, oh, good, I've got my champion of the parish out on the board, and nothing else.
yeah,
So.
it's very frustrating. I know, James. Just to go back to like what you were talking about as far as modern, one of the podcasts I listen to from time to time that's more in the realm of the adult audiences. Over at Heavy Meta, this guy Heavy Metal, one of the hosts, he is an avid burn player also, and he actually plays red, black, white, like all three colors together, so that he has access to sweet sideboard cards. He has Boros Charm, he has Dark Confidant, and like all at the same time, and it's a very greedy deck, but it also kind of seems like the way he plays, and I'd like to look at something like that a little bit more. He just seems like he's always about like maintaining card advantage with Dark Confidant, but then also having other answers. So, anyways, that build seems fascinating to me.
Anyway, anything? So that's, I think, a lot of what we were talking about tonight. Do you guys have anything that we want to mention in closing?
I don't think so. I think that just the big to me, anyways, the big takeaway for aggro is sweet, but you got to remember that you need to have reach. And where I play most of my aggro is in draft and sealed to a lesser extent, but I love drafting a really good, tight aggro deck. That could be very rewarding, especially now that we live in a world where we have like crazy mana. We have 3 land cycles that exist in draft. At common, uncommon, and rare. We have the sort of clue stones, the banners. So I mean, people are probably going to go far and wide building 4 or 5 color decks. And man, if you could just get down and build like a 2 color super aggressive deck, I bet you could really punish people at your table. So, anyways, that'd be kind of fun.
Right, and one of the big things that I do want to end on is that just because it's a easy deck to start out on does not mean that it's absolutely just a beginner level deck.
Yeah.
There is still a lot of room for improvement that you can have with the deck, and there's a lot of room for just good play.
There's
level.
depth to it. It has
there
a lot of
definitely is depth,
Yeah.
and there is always a better play that should be looked for.
So watch out, Dis and Red. Just kidding. All right, moving along. Anything else, Peter, you have in closing?
No, I don't think so. I think what Blade says is absolutely right. Aggro it's more than just beating heads. There is nuance and there are decisions to be made to it.
Yeah.
So you can build an aggro deck and it can grow with you.
And that's why I look forward to many years of playing Red, because I know that it's not just I'm looking at it from, I am a beginner, and so I like it from that beginner aspect that there are. It certainly has. It feels good to have to be aggressive and have that. It sort of streamlines when you're a beginner, but also I look forward to saying, well, there's a lot I can learn too. It's not. I'm not just wasting my time on it. Anyway, moving along.
Combat phase.
What happened this week in the land of combat, on the battlefield, or whatever you want to say? Anybody play?
I played a little bit at my F&M. I played the deck that I actually played on a stream last week, the America or Jeskai Burn or Tempo. I'm not really sold on that list.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was only able to get my hands on 2 Goblin Rabble Master, and I think that may have been a big difference in it, because that guy is just bonkers. Every time I did get him, I felt unstoppable. So that definitely needs.
So maybe that was the issue. Not enough
yeah,
Rabble
like
Master.
going into it, like right now it looks like you either want to be a Courser list or a Rabble Master list going into this new standard. And that's.
You think that's what we're
I
gonna
think
see
that's
in Pro
actually
Tour?
fairly accurate. Yeah, you're gonna see a lot of those different kinds of lists.
Yeah, Courser and Rabble Master will definitely be battling it out all weekend.
I have also heard that blue-black is actually pretty big online. Blue-black
Really?
control deck. Yeah, like apparently they're just skipping out on the green altogether. I have not seen a list, but that's just what I've heard from multiple sources.
Interesting.
Damon, you play any this week?
You know,
You've been busy. You've been a busy boy.
I have been actually busier than I've been consistently for a really long time. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've been trying to keep up with all of my grown-up things, and my grown-up things right now include new job and trying to just keep up on like. I'm working out for a pretty big company, at least in the realms of like Utah, it's big, and they just have like this really intense like process to get you up off the ground and get you working for them. They have all these crazy trainings that you need to do and classes and keeping up on all this computer like based training stuff and then of course like I'm kind of getting used to again doing like 12-hour shifts in the hospital, and I just got off of 2 overnights in a row. And these guys do kind of flip-floppy overnights and days, so that'll be something to get used to as well. So anyways, I know it probably to a good number of people out there, it sounds like wah wah excuse. But
Well, since Rich isn't here, we need somebody complaining.
yeah, I guess so.
See if he responds to
man.
that in the chat room.
Yeah, I think he may have started to drive home.
Oh,
but
okay.
Anyways, yeah, I don't know. I really there's like a lot of decks that I want to try, and I'm
Yeah.
just looking forward to future fight clubs and stuff like that. So.
And yeah. Again, apologies. I didn't mention this. We didn't have Fight Club today.
That is correct.
I had some work things come up that I had to devote.
It's like a theme today.
Yeah. Anyway, Peter, how about you?
Yeah, I haven't played any Magic yet this week, but last week, that was when I got together with my buddy, got my Naya Zoo beat down and burned to heck. But also played some EDH. I built an Omnath. For those of you out there who don't know what Omnath is, I think it's a 3 mana for a 1/1 green elemental, and Omnath Locus of Mana. And what he does, he is basically he's like crew fixes now, except for it's for every the green mana that you pay stays. It doesn't go away from turn to turn or from phase to phase. But also for every green mana that you have floating, he gets a +1/+1 counter. So
Wow.
basically you just create this giant.
That is really cool.
Oh, it's a lot of fun. It also makes the other people you're playing EDH against kind of mad. But
For some reason.
yeah. But what's fun with him then is I put in a lot of Hydras and stuff in the deck too. So I was able to put out some Hydras that would be fairly large, or some older cards that put out Saprolings, like a good number of Saprolings based on the toughness or power of a creature. And so that's been a lot of fun. And then my standard black-white EDH that I've been playing and slowly improving on. That does fairly well. So I play a lot of EDH mostly, and a lot of French, but basically just me and my buddy usually.
Nice.
And I'm also neck deep. Literally, I've got like a 6 or 7 inch stack of cards as I'm building my Abzan EDH with Gave, the Guru of was it Guru of Spores?
Guru of Spores, yeah.
Yep.
As my commander. So I'll let you know how that goes.
Actually, sorry, just speaking of combat, there's a deck that I saw recently that seems super sweet. It runs Riddle of Lightning, which is 3 red for an instant. It says choose target creature player, scry 3, then reveal the top card of your library. Riddle of Lightning deals that much damage equal to the card's converted mana cost to the creature player. So what the deck is doing is it's like it has a lot of like scry through type effects, and then it also has lots of delve.
Ooh.
And it's running Treasure Cruise and Peer Through Time or whatever that both have converted mana costs of 8. And so it uses Riddle of Lightning as almost like a finisher. And then it just
and it's scry 3 to set up.
yeah, and like you burn, and then also has the red blue counter burn spell, and so it's like an actual counter burn list. Like it's just blue red,
I like
draw
this.
cards and burn people, and
I like
it
this.
seems super cool. So I'll have to try to get a hold of a list.
Sweet.
Because Riddle of Lightning seems like a
I need
fun
to pay
card
more
to play around
attention
with.
to cards. I mean,
So
that's one that's there, and I just wasn't even
well, and
paying
like Riddle of
attention to
Lightning got kind of written offhand. You know, like when it came out, there just wasn't like a lot to do with it. But now we have these cards that are very playable that have converted mana costs of 7 and 8 because they have Delve. And so it's like, you know, cards become relevant in different environments.
Right.
And I don't know. that kind of is exciting to me. So
Very cool.
it's not my current combat. It's like my hoped for future combat. I want to give this a try.
Well, if we're talking about future combat, I still plan on playing some Magic one of these days. So let's move along.
Second main phase.
In our second main phase, let's see. Email. I wanted to see if I had any. Seems like I had one. One from Bruce. Where was that?
Do do do.
Do 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 do
Do
do
do
do do
do
do.
do.
There it is. Got an email from Bruce. Guys, love your recap of the last year. I've enjoyed your podcast since I found it last March, and have found it to be terrific. You guys are funny, insightful, thought-provoking, and down-to-earth, making you guys an excellent group of ambassadors for the Magic community on the whole. I also really appreciate how you have included the members in the community of listeners to your podcast. I, for one, feel like I have connected to a number of people who play Magic on the far side of North America, which is crazy, and really appreciate that opportunity. Thanks very much, and I will continue to listen to your content and hope for many more years of great content. Regards, Bruce. Thanks, Bruce, for that. We love hearing emails. These emails are just
Bruce is one of our Canadian friends, right?
freaking awesome. Yes, he is.
Yes.
He is he's
Our
one
good
of our
francophone friends.
That's right. And I haven't checked. I didn't check.
iTunes 5-star reviews.
iTunes. I'll have to do that. Maybe I'll skip it this week. I'll look.
So we've had a question a couple times, Peter. I don't know if you're hanging out in the chat. Is there a store that you ever play at when you do play Magic, or are you pretty much kitchen table for the most part?
You know, I used to, and it basically changed with my schedule. There was a place, you know, again, all the gaming stores near me are about 40 miles or 40 minutes away. There was one I used to play at on Saturdays, and that worked because my wife had well, first of all, we didn't have a baby, and my wife had a class on Saturdays, so I would go while she was in class. Well, now she doesn't have a class, and we also have a baby, so that's kind of changed my ability to.
So now you have a baby and no class.
Yeah. So basically, I'm able to carve out time just, with one-on-one games on the weekends, or I kind of have a standing time on Mondays at the local coffee shop. So I would, what I would love is there's always been rumors that somebody's going to open up a gaming store in our town. That's been rumored for like 10 years. So
it would make sense since it's a college town. That'd be nice. Yeah. So
the thing was, at one time we had 3 gaming stores and they all closed. So
oh yeah.
I don't know why that happened, but
yeah, it's. I mean, I kind of work very part time at a shop, and I know Rich. That's his full time gig right now, as he's going to school, and the business of running a geek shop, a nerdy type store, like that. It's kind of tricky, and I think a lot of people maybe don't approach it. They approach it from perspective
how
like
cool it would be to have.
It would be so fun, and
Right.
like you actually have to be like pretty business smart. To survive, and I think going with enough probably like opening initial money investment. So
right. Well, and each of the 3, like there are like 3 or 4 big ones in the the north of where I live, and each one of them has to cater to a different group of gamers. Like one of them is really big into like miniatures and board games. The other one is really big into Magic. Another one is really big into Magic, but really seems to cater to, guys who are going to go to GPs and PTQs and stuff like that. So, like each one of those stores has to, I guess, has to find their niche to make their money. So
Right.
yeah.
So the poll of the week. I was just going to look at the results and see what we have here so far. Okay, the poll of the week is: where do you think MTG will be in a year?
All right.
I had it messed up, and so people that tried to vote probably didn't get a chance because it wasn't accepting votes. So I fixed it. So if you have if you want to go and vote, you can vote. In fact, if you want to put an answer in, you can put an answer in. Is that one yours?
More than likely, yes.
Okay. So here's the options. In the bargain bin at Kmart, currently that has 0 votes, so that's good. But if that's where you think we'll be, then vote that. Doing a nightclub act in Vegas, I have 1 vote for that, coming up to 12% of the current votes. where you are now, in a garage in some guy's house, is 3 votes. It's probably a pretty good guess. Yeah, it puts the lotion on.
I don't even know what that means.
That one just because it's weird.
Yeah.
No votes. That means you're going to be in a hole someplace where somebody wrote.
Right. We've been abducted by a crazy person.
Yeah.
Granted, yes, my skin is
Bill?
attractive.
What did you say, Peter?
By Buffalo Bill from Silence
Yep.
of the Lambs.
You
Exactly.
Buffalo Bill or Joe Dirt, Joe Dirte. That got 0 votes so far. Primetime television on Thursday nights actually has 2 votes. So people think that we're moving
getting
up.
there.
We're
Coming to you live from ESPN4. This is
We're
MTGYou.
moving on up to the east side. Dumpster diving for Commons has 1 vote. That must be a write-in. And here's another write-in: secondhand adult movies. I'm guessing that's Blades. Secondhand adult movies. Anyway, gee. So anyway, that's the poll. I'm going to leave that up for another week, maybe 2. So we'll see. Probably just 1 more week. Go vote if you have something funny to add. Add that to it. I also have. Let me give you an update on the site. I've been doing some more work on the back end. I'm working on. I've been working on some of the deck building things. That isn't visible yet. If you have created an account, thanks for those that have created accounts. I know there's several of you that have created an account. Right now, it doesn't give you anything different than if you don't have an account. However, it will. It will in the future. So create yourself an account, and there'll be some goodies coming that way that is going to make it worth your while. And one last thing. I've received some really cool things this week that I want to unveil at this time. I was saying earlier that Blades has demonstrated himself to be very versatile. When we first started this podcast, we just thought of Blades as being a blue mage, but then we come and find out that he also loves the elves. We also find out that he loves burn. And so this is what I wanted to unveil right now. We have some new characters that have been designed by a friend of the podcast. Well, I don't know if I can call him that, but I hope that he's a friend.
He's becoming a friend,
He's
right?
becoming a friend. I found this guy on Twitter. His name's Jamie. He goes by 7 Cups a Day. I think it's at 7 Cups a Day or something like that.
For his Twitter, yeah.
For his Twitter. Amazing artist. He doesn't just do these types. In fact, let me unveil this. Here it is. Drum roll, please. There's Blades, if you're watching the video, and this is what do you call these?
The chibi.
Yeah. So we're going to be making things like tokens and other merchandise. Perhaps I don't want to just say merchandise because I'm going to be saying things that we might do as giveaways. We might do mouse pads or not mouse pads, play mats. Who knows what? But we had these commissioned by him. He did a awesome job.
Absolutely.
Here is Damon.
I love that. That's too cool.
Otherwise known as Demunculus.
Yeah, with
He's-
Demunculus on
he's
Twitter.
Homunculus, and he has that a cool magic T-shirt because we all know that he's always wearing. He's probably the one that most likely of anyone to have a magic-related T-shirt.
Well, and just T-shirts in general. Seems like, I mean, look at this. These guys, they got collars all the time.
I
man.
know.
I am not fancy enough for collars, unfortunately. So.
Or like a cool geek T-shirt today, and I just didn't. I need to next
Yeah,
time.
look at you. You're like all dressed up for winter there. It looks like. Yeah.
It's cold up here in the mighty Black Swamp. You know.
Well, you were right in the middle of the polar vortex, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
cold here.
It's terrible.
But zombies don't care. Zombies don't care. And so here's Peter, and he's not wearing a shirt, and has a pencil in his eye because he's our writer, and he's saying drafting. I think that's kind of cool. And so anyway, I love that one.
Sorry, somebody in the comments. We just noticed that Blades, he likes elves and burn and control, which makes him kind of rug, which would make him kind of teamer. There's now like the new Savage Knuckle Blades.
Oh,
as a new
Savage Knuckle Blades.
Yeah,
Interesting.
I feel like if you had to redo your Twitter handle,
Savage
we now know what it would
Blades.
be.
Yeah.
That's actually quite tempting.
Yeah.
I guess I am a teamer kind of guy.
He's a teamer player.
I don't know about teamer, but
There's an I in teamer, so
there's an I in teamer. Next we have Rich, who isn't with us today, but this is Rich to a T. First of all, Deathrite Shaman all the way. I'm just sad that Deathrite Shaman. We always tease him about that, but Deathrite Shaman is his favorite card. So we did that we had his done in the theme of Deathrite, and that turned out amazing. And of course, what would you expect from me? But
red.
a goblin.
It's a goblin.
It's a goblin. And so that's me. So,
Kind of a greenish goblin.
yeah, I'm green. I admit it. I like green and I like red, and hey, that's me. So that's our new characters. I hope that you like them. We're going to be putting out we're going to be starting to use these on various things. I just wanted to unveil those tonight.
Yeah, we actually had some calls last week in the chat for some kind of merch, something, T-shirts, whatever. And
Yeah, it's coming.
I know we're definitely looking at playmats right now, but if there's some stuff that you guys would like to have, we currently obviously have the, like James was saying earlier, the life pad counters, and you guys can get those for free. But anyways, we are just excited to be able to start doing other kinds of merch. And of course, if you guys support some sweet merch, then that also helps us continue to pay for hosting, and of course James has like all these cool cameras and stuff like that. So
we are on a monthly basis. We're kind of going in the hole because currently it's a negative proposition. Am I right?
Yeah.
What
And
do you
also,
say?
if
Not
you're a fancy, rich Magic content producer person, and you want to pick us up,
yeah, we might consider it.
We might consider that. We would consider a partnership, anyways, for sure. So
3D life counter. Somebody in the is Rich said you notice on mine it's a kind of a knockoff of a Dr. Pepper. It's the MTGYou shirt that looks like that's in the style of a Dr. Pepper, which is also my
drink of choice,
mother's milk of choice, so to speak, or nectar of the gods, or whatever you call it. Anyway, anything else left today? Let me look back at the doc here, see if there's anything that I have forgotten. If you want to shout out or if anything like that, send us an email, drop us a line, send us a 5-star review. Any of that stuff would be simply awesome. Anything else, guys?
I think we're good.
Thanks for staying with us, Peter. It's currently 11:30 where you're at, so you're a trooper, man.
I have to get up in an hour to feed my boy anyway, so I am good to stay.
Anyway,
Sweet.
So we really appreciate you coming on the show today, and you'll be on again in the future. We just plan on having you on once in a while as the fifth Beatle, so to speak. No, I'm just kidding. I don't know if that's the right term or whatnot. Ringo.
No, it's been a lot of fun. Thanks for having me on. Good time.
Yes, always a pleasure.
Yeah. Anything else, guys?
I think.
Are we
we're
good?
good.
Yep.
Are we good?
Yeah.
We miss you, Rich. Sorry you couldn't be here today.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see you. All right, here goes.
End step.
And script, as usual. If you want to contact us, you can send email to mtgupodcast@gmail.com. Interact with us on Facebook by going to facebook.com/mtgu. Follow us on Twitter @TheMTGYou. Catch us live on Thursday nights on twitch.tv/MTGU. Subscribe and like us on YouTube. Find us on youtube.com/MTGU. We're also on Stitcher. So for the MTGYou podcast,
I'm Blades.
I'm Damon.
I'm Peter.
And I'm James. Now we pass the turn to you.
I was trying.
No, I have my eye on it, but then I was expecting him to have at least one more sentence of saying something.
I gotcha.
Like
do
I
I
wasn't
have-
paying attention to him.
Is there like another
No.
social media that we need to join so that it
Oh,
lasts a
there
little bit longer?
is.
Instagram.
Peter has been encouraging us to get on
That Instagram.
that Instagram thing, and so we might have to do it.
Do we need to jump on some dating sites too? should we start like?
Now on eHarmony.
Get like the
We put
my
put-
Demunculus on Tinder or whatever.
We
Like,
put the entire MTGYou on eHarmony.
Rich
You're not
has the best picture for it right now too.
Yeah, he does.
His squirrel picture.
That is squirrel holding a beer pitcher.
Yep. We've got it all figured out.
Yep. Anyway. People, what do you think of the new music? I want to hear feedback. Do you hate it? Do you love it? Do you...
It's got like a Egyptian or Arabic feel to it with that bam, 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 bam.
World
Like-
music. They call that world
Yeah, it's
music.
kind of world
Is it?
music.
I really like the piano though.
Yeah, it's cool.
I like how it starts off with the
Yeah.
boom. It's like something out of like a 90s video game or something. Maybe not 90s.
Yeah, Rich, we'll make your photo into a squirrel token. That'd be awesome.
It sounds to me almost kind of like a rainforest, you know? Like
Yeah.
pianos like the rain.
Yeah, see, it's all growing on you now. You guys were a little bit detractors. Well, you've been making fun of it as elevator music, but now it's gonna grow on you guys, and you're gonna
not
like
bad.
it. By the end of the year, you guys are gonna be saying, "Man, James, I don't like this new one. I like the old one."
Right.
That's
Well, you
where
know,
we're gonna go.
change is hard for everyone. It causes a certain amount of
Absolutely.
stress.
Yeah.
Except for me, I just
You just change
constantly
everything always.
The only thing that's constant is change.